Hey, if you have a passion and you love what you have something that you would love to do at the end of the day, like go for it. No one's stopping you. And we only have one go around, so why not make the most of it? And you're going to fail, but that's okay. You just get right back up and keep going.
Main Street businesses are struggling as they face challenges nothing like we've seen before. You're listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. Let's learn from real-world Main Street entrepreneurs, pick their brains, and learn their secrets to navigate, persevere, and overcome all the modern obstacles they face every day. Get ready to peek behind the stories, the struggles, and strategies of today's Main Street entrepreneurs. Welcome to the Behind Main Street podcast. Here's your host, Chris J. Cardona.
Well, great day, everyone. Welcome to the show. Whether it's your first time listening or an avid follower, thank you so much for joining us. Show notes can be found at www.behindmainstreet.com. But before we get started, I would like to thank the sponsor for this episode.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thinkin' Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission is to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact in the local community with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting local.com.
So for today's episode, I'm very, very excited to interview Alex Tsubokawa. She is the founder and chief baker of Liberty Baking Company, where she creates comfort baked goods like biscuits, cookies, hand pies, and loaves, where she combines her love of baking with her patriotism. I'm very eager to learn more about her and her company. Alex, are you ready to take us behind the curtains and dig into your story?
I sure am.
Bring out the shovels. Let's dig for gold.
Awesome. Well, I've given our listeners a little bit of a sneak peek of who you are. Why don't you tell them a little bit more about yourself and what it is that you do?
All right, so I'm Alex Tsubokawa. I am the owner slash founder of Love and Liberty Baking Co. I am a cottage food business, so I bake out of my home kitchen. Right now, I sell at farmers markets, I do pop-up events, but I specialize in just all American baked goods. So the stuff that, grandma will make: cookies, biscuits, scones, pies, just all of that good stuff.
That's amazing. Well, I've definitely had it. I was fortunate enough to be at one of the events that you were in, and I was able to. My wife loved it. My kids loved it. I loved it as well, especially the. I think it was the chocolate chip. I mean, who doesn't like chocolate chip? But I loved.
Yeah.
Everybody loved your goods. So
Thank
a
you.
testament to you.
Thank you.
Maybe you can tell us something interesting that your family and friends would say about you.
That's a tough one. I would probably say that my friends and family would say that I like to kind of go against the current. I've always been a fan of doing hard things. Even when I was in high school, when all my friends were going to college, I decided to go kind of like the opposite route, not do the 4 year. I went to a JC. I had a job waiting tables. And then I dropped out of college, worked, traveled a little bit, and then ultimately decided to pursue my childhood dream of going to culinary school. And then here I am. So kind of
Fantastic.
taking the non-traditional route. That's probably what they would say.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, we to each his own. Like you create your path. Whatever works for you is what I think. You can't be judged about like how you do things, but
Mhm.
how the result is in the end,
Oh,
right? I mean, when you
absolutely.
bake, when you put those ingredients together, I'm sure when you're creating some of those new recipes, you don't exactly know how it's going to turn out, but you know the ingredients and the hard work that you put in them and the recipes. It's what makes it what it is.
Oh yeah. And then, just the whole process of trial and error and, you know, trying one thing, tasting it and tweaking it and just doing it over and over and over again until you have a product that you're proud of.
Absolutely. Well, how would you describe your mission in life?
My mission in life, I think, just as an individual, is just to be a good person, a person of good character, have integrity, you know, be kind, and just to leave a positive impression on everyone that you come into contact with, whether it's for a short period of time or extended period of time. Just leave people, you know, with a good impression and just be a good person.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, what would you say most people misunderstand about Alex?
That's a tough one. I've been thinking about this one for a while, and
Hmm,
I would definitely say that what people would misunderstand about me most is that I think my upbringing potentially of just they are baffled that my parents didn't put a ton of pressure on me to go one direction, and they have just been incredibly supportive um, through everything that I've tried in life. And just like I said, the non-traditional route.
I gotcha. I think it's a common stereotype for Asian families, for people that are outside, that are not Asian, to
Mhm.
always think that if you're coming from an Asian family, your parents are telling you you're gonna be a this, you're gonna be a that. But sometimes, it's not always like that.
No, absolutely not. And, I think in my family, I do have some entrepreneurs. So it was just a natural kind of, hey, as long as you put in the hard work and you're all in, then we support you and we trust that you're going to do what you need to do.
That's amazing. They get it.
Yeah, we do. And I'm lucky. And, I hope more parents can take note from that.
Absolutely. We're our listeners who have kids that are on their way to college and things of
Mhm.
that nature. Take note of that. And even for me, and I have four kids. My oldest is a freshman in high school, so
Okay.
he still has a ways away. But
Yeah.
definitely, it's good advice for me as well as a parent.
Oh, for sure. And, less debt.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm still paying for my student loans.
Right? Right?
But well, if there was one thing that you would say that you value most in life,
Mhm.
what would you say that would be?
I would say family. My family is everything to me. They are super involved in my business. Um, and they are really the reason why I am the way I am today. Family and, like I said, just being an all around good person of good character and just leaving that positive impression on everyone that you meet.
Speaking of that, leaving a positive impression, a lot of times we think about the long-term impact that we will leave, right? The legacy
Mhm.
that we will leave. Have you ever had thoughts about the impact that you and your business will have in the short term, like in 5 years?
I would say, yeah, definitely. I think um, my goal is to not only have amazing tasting quality products, but I want to bring kind of that nostalgia back. Growing up, I always looked forward to, certain family members and the dishes that they would make, or just the foods that you eat that just takes you back to, your childhood or something that you grew up with. Just having that kind of impression, and being able to be that familiar face to families around town of like, hey, I love your cookies, or, I always go to the farmer's market with my kid and we always, buy a cookie from you, and that's just our thing. I think that's the kind of lasting impression that I want to make um, as a business, is to be that business that welcomes everybody, that you can, me, I know you, and just to really have that relationship with your customer so they know where their food's coming from.
Absolutely, very hometown feel. And I
Definitely.
think you're right. I mean, that's some of the things that has been lost through the years. Everything has been commercialized, right? And having that, like I think I was talking to another guest a while back in one of the earlier episodes about, like this Lifetime Hallmark movie type of feel that sometimes is already lost, right? Like
Yeah.
small communities really
Mhm.
working together and making putting what they love out there for others to consume and to enjoy, and that's exactly what it is that you're trying to do, which
Yeah.
is, mad props to you. And like we talked about off the call, I mean
Mhm.
off the recording, you're doing this, at home with a
Yeah.
home-based kitchen,
Yeah.
which is very, very fascinating. We'll talk
Mhm.
more about that a little bit later.
Okay.
I'm curious. So let's say after this interview, you go to sleep, you wake
Uh-huh.
up tomorrow, and you have $100 million in your bank.
Ooh.
What would you spend it on?
I would probably spend it on, I'd buy myself a house. I'd build out my dream kitchen. I would pay off my family's house and like my grandparents, pretty much just take care of my immediate family and make sure that they're good. Pay off my sister's student loans. She's almost there out of college. Um, but really just invested and give back to the community, give back to organizations that I support. Um, and be able to live a life where finances are not a worry, essentially. Doesn't need to be extravagant, just basic necessities. Be able to give my friends and family experiences and, others in the community. So, yeah, I think
That's
just
great. Well,
get
I
all
mean,
the basic necessities taken care of.
yeah, absolutely. I think once if we take money out of the equation, I think we have a different perspective, right? Like
Oh,
I
100%.
forgot what it was. Like if you knew that you would live forever, like your perspective in life will be completely different,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Oh,
And
yeah.
if you knew that money wasn't an issue, like your
Mhm.
decision making would be completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that's when probably the true self comes out.
Oh, definitely. And I think, we learn to value things differently and things get put in perspective when we know that, we don't have all the money in the world or we don't have all the time in the world. So we need to make the most of what we can with what we have.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head there. You mentioned earlier that of course family is the most important thing for you, and then
Mhm.
when you were going to win that $100 million or have that $100 million again, the family narrative comes back, right?
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about how was your childhood like when you were growing up?
I, I had a great childhood. I actually am from Chino Hills, so born and raised, lived that suburban life. I was involved in like Girl Scouts, basketball, dance. I was just the kid who loved to socialize. I lived in a neighborhood where there was a ton of other kids. So as soon as we got out of school, as soon as we got home, we did our homework real quick. And then we'd be out riding bikes. And it was one of those where everyone's garage door was open. And you could end up at someone else's house for dinner and you would just say, "Hey mom, I'm at so and so's house for dinner and I'll be back, after dinner." So that was my childhood. And then also, growing up, my grandparents, they owned a restaurant. So when I was really little, having family businesses, they would, if they wanted to see me, they'd call up and say, "Hey, like, we need some help." So I grew up in a restaurant and, that was my first taste of the food industry, essentially.
Wow, wow. Well, I mean, you mentioned earlier that you really love baking. Was that your dream career growing up as a child, or was it a little bit different?
No, it's exactly what I wanted to do when I was a kid. But to be more specific, when I was a kid, my dream job was to be a pastry chef at Disneyland that made the wedding cakes.
That's super specific. Why? Tell us, unpack that a little bit for us. Why that? I mean,
I
Disneyland wedding cakes, I would think
Yeah,
like princess and stuff like that.
no.
I'm not thinking about weddings. So tell us a little bit more.
Well, I always loved being in the kitchen. I love to bake, and then I started watching Food Network and all of those TV shows, and I think I watched like an episode on Disneyland and that whole pastry department. I was like, "Oh my gosh, that's so cool." Like I love Disneyland. I grew up going there, and I'm like, "Anna, you can bake there? Like that is so cool." So that was my specific dream job as a kid.
Wow, that was ultra specific.
Oh yeah.
I didn't realize that was a thing. You think like pastry chef, you would watch what's his name? I forgot his name. Buddy? No, no. Is his name Buddy? Carlos, like the bakery
Yeah,
guy from. And then there was another pastry chef guy. He designs the cakes. I forgot his name.
it's like the cake
Um,
boss guy.
no, it's another guy. Oh, well, that guy too. But there was another guy that was on. I think it was a Cooking Network or Food Network, and
Okay.
they design all these like cakes and things like that,
Mhm.
and they deliver it and stuff like that, which
Yeah,
is super super fascinating.
yeah.
The most like the scariest thing is the creating the thing is impressive,
Mhm.
but getting it delivered
Oh,
was
yeah.
a whole another thing.
Oh, yeah. It's nerve-wracking watching those.
Like I can just imagine like getting put in the truck, right? Like
Mhm.
on the way to wherever you're delivering this magical piece that you've spent so much time on.
Yeah.
Like you gotta trust that person that's back there. You gotta trust that traffic is gonna be, like
Yeah.
there, like just right, just to
Yep.
get to wherever you need to go.
Yep. Yep.
That's crazy. That's crazy. Were you a kid that liked school? Was there any favorite or least favorite subjects that you had?
So I was not a huge fan of school. I like school for the social aspect. I loved, socializing, hanging out with my friends. I would say elementary school, I did really enjoy school. I went to Country Springs and we just had a ton of fun. I learned so much there. But then once you got into junior high and high school, things kind of got a little bit more dull. You weren't learning songs to memorize things. You weren't, doing all the cool crafts and whatnot. But I would probably say like my favorite classes were always the art classes and English. And my least favorite were math and science.
Yeah, I think a lot of us can attest to that. That's why I think I was talking to another guest. My son is really good at math. Me
Hmm.
and my wife are not.
Yeah,
So like, where did they get it from?
exactly. Exactly. And I mean, my mom was, bless her, she was only able to help me with math after a certain point because after that, it's like, all right, we got to get you a tutor.
I know. I mean, math nowadays is very different. I
It
remember, I mean,
is.
I went to Eagle Canyon Elementary School here. I mean,
Uh-huh.
you're very familiar where that is.
Yeah.
And then when my oldest went to school, they're some of the first students that did the Common Core math.
Okay.
And when we were trying to help him with his homework, it was like, okay, because they're breaking down numbers, doing number bonds and things of that nature, which
Hmm.
I didn't know what number bond was at the time.
Yeah. I know
And
what those
he
are.
would come home as like, yeah, he would say like 2 plus 2, like, okay, 4.
Yeah.
Illustrate or draw that out. Like, what? What do you mean? And then explain. Like, what? No, no, no. Like 2 and 2, you add them up. 1, 2, 3, 4, it's 4. Like,
Yeah.
what is there to explain? No, I can't.
Uh-huh.
I can't explain that, but you have to. So
Oh
that was
my
a thing. But I
gosh.
think in a way, it helped my son break numbers down differently than
Got it.
I do. Maybe that's
Mm.
why he likes math better, because maybe that is the thing, right? That's why I don't
It's
like math,
more
because I
visual
learned it the
now.
hard way. Yeah, I mean, the way he adds stuff is fascinating because he's
Huh.
like he can add big numbers or multiply big numbers
Mhm.
much much easier. Like I have to have a pen and paper
Oh,
or
yeah.
a calculator.
Oh, yeah. Those are lifesavers. I mean, my kitchen converter app is my savior.
Oh yeah, that's right. You do a lot of math now.
I know.
Making
Joke's
sure
on me.
those measurements are right.
Yep. Math and science is something now I'm like, "All right. baking is science and
Chemistry in a way, right?
measurements is math. So
Yeah.
turns out I do need it.
Well, if you when you look back, right? Was there something in your childhood that when you're thinking back to it, you
Mhm.
felt that it led you to exactly where you are today?
Yeah. I was the kid who played with the Easy Bake Oven. I had the cash register, toy. I had the little play kitchen. So not only did I play with Barbies, I loved to play like restaurant and serve people and take orders. And um, when I was in Girl Scouts, I was talking to my mom earlier, and she's like, Alex, you do know why you joined Girl Scouts. And I was like, no, like, why did I join Girl Scouts? And she was like, because you wanted to sell cookies.
Oh, that's
And I was
right.
like, well, I'm not, I'm doing it now. I'm still doing it.
There you go. That's
Yeah.
a skill.
Yeah. So I think, those little experiences that pretty much gave me the confidence to do what I'm doing now.
That's perfect. It's definitely a turning point, you would say, in your life.
Yeah, especially in childhood.
Well, now that we've gotten to know your story a little bit more, are you ready to go a little bit deeper?
Yeah, let's go.
Fantastic. Well, we'll pretend that there's an audio that goes in here.
Okay. Loop it in.
I know we will. Well, what does being a local Main Street entrepreneur mean to someone like you?
It means just being really in touch with your community, going back to the days where you know your neighbors, and really being just a little part in making a better community.
Gotcha. I mean, you mentioned that your family, your grandparents, were in the restaurant business.
Mhm.
Was that how being an entrepreneur got on your radar as a kid?
Oh, absolutely. They, just going to the restaurant, seeing their clients, and really just it was like a gathering place. Everyone went there and knew my grandparents. My grandparents knew their customers, and just to kind of see that community and camaraderie over good food and drinks. I think that it really drew me into having an interest in the hospitality industry. And then
Gotcha.
also growing up, my parents would share with me that my great grandpa, he had a meat market in Watts. So
Wow.
yeah, that's what he did when he came over. He opened a meat market, and the part that it played in the neighborhood, and that was also a part that drew me into bringing people together over food.
It's fascinating how many of our ancestors that came to America were entrepreneurs, right?
Mhm.
They didn't come here like I'm going to go find a safe, secure job.
No.
No, I'm gonna come to America and I'm gonna start a business.
Yeah, they did. And you know just knowing your family history, and I'm like fourth, fifth generation out here, so my history goes pretty deep. And yeah, they were all entrepreneurs, at some point, whether meat market, or I had a grandpa who grew up, working on the farms. So, just we've always been working.
That's good. It's fascinating. I hear stories where, the gold rush here in California,
Hmm.
people think of the gold rush as like everybody just panning or like mining for gold.
Yeah.
But the most money made
Hmm.
was from the people that made and sold the tools
Yeah.
for the gold rush, which is like that is the real gold rush, not the
Mhm.
actual like
Gold
gold.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's really goes back to entrepreneurship, right?
Mhm. Yeah,
Um,
definitely.
Out of all of your entrepreneurship uh, influence, you would
Mhm.
say, who would you say was the the largest impact for you? Like, who was it that really kind of encouraged this entrepreneurial spirit in you?
I would say it would just be a mix between my family and just people that I've come into contact with over the years. And I would even go as far as saying back in elementary school, they really developed and encouraged an entrepreneurial spirit. I mean, in sixth grade, we had uh, an entrepreneur day where we created a business and we sold our goods and used the money that we earned for good behavior in class, and we were able to shop around at everyone's businesses.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
I wonder, my, I mean, like I said, I have 4 kids, and
Mhm.
I don't remember any. My 3 kids are in school. I don't remember any of them doing something like that. It's all. I mean, the projects and things of that
Mhm.
nature. But
Yeah.
yeah, they had to. They had definitely had to bring that back.
Oh, absolutely. I think, that is super important. And I think it's such a great experience for kids because I don't know if it's just because of the era that I grew up in where, lemonade stands were the hot thing to do and, making things and then selling them on, in your neighborhood. But no, I would definitely encourage schools and parents to do things like that with their kids because it really gets their imagination going and you teach them just life skills and the concept of working and earning.
That's fascinating. I know there's this uh her name is Nicole Tabatabai. I hope I'm
Mhm.
pronouncing her name. Nicole, if you listen to this episode, please don't kill me if I butchered the way you say your last name. And she actually did host here at the shops in Chino Hills
Uh-huh.
a entrepreneurial kids entrepreneurial fair,
That's awesome.
which
I
was
think I saw that because my neighbors their kids participated in it and I think they
yeah.
sold lemonade. So
There you go.
that's
Yeah, I
super
mean, I think
cool.
they should do that at every school level,
Yeah.
right? Like, imagine if instead of having just the science fair, science fairs are important, but imagine like an entrepreneurial fair where
Mhm.
everybody kind of competes within the school, and then you go to like a district level and then county level, and
That would be
that
really
would be
cool. It's like
that
the
would be
spelling
cool.
bee, but for entrepreneurs.
Yeah, exactly. Now, if I won $100 million when I wake up tomorrow, I'm gonna work on funding something like that, and I'm gonna call you.
That's a good one. That's a good one. We can add that to the list.
Yeah. Well, you were in you were in college. You dropped out. When was it that you made that pivotal decision? You know what? I'm going to be an entrepreneur. Like, how was that like?
So after I decided to step back from college, I was working waiting tables, and then I got bit by the travel bug. And I think, like most of my contemporaries who, enjoy travel, I was still kind of young. I was 20, I think I was like 20, 21. Um, yeah, and I had worked, saved up my money, had, a very healthy amount saved up, and I wanted to do a long trip. But at the time, none of my, all of my friends were still in school and they couldn't take a month off to travel. I didn't want to travel alone per se. So, and I wanted to be productive. I didn't want to just gallivant around and, just do all the touristy things. So I looked into volunteering. So I did a volunteer abroad in India for a month. Yeah, so over there, I got to live and really get a good grasp of the culture and talk to people. And I came back with just a new perspective and a newfound kind of gratitude for the freedom that I have out here and the opportunity that we have here. And I was just like, you know what? Life's too short. You have all of this opportunity and all these resources at your disposal. You would be doing yourself a disservice for not going for it and taking that risk to just pursue what you've always wanted to, and you knew in your gut you wanted to pursue, but you were just too afraid to do it, because everyone around you was doing something else, and you're like, like that's not the route that I want to go, but I want to fit in still, so maybe I'm not going to pursue that. But after coming back from that trip, you know, I had to. So I started looking into culinary school, and then I signed up shortly after.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you came back from India, you went to culinary school,
Mhm.
graduated culinary school, and then you decided, let me start Love and Liberty Baking Company, right?
No. So I
Oh
graduated
no, okay.
from culinary school and I worked for a catering company, and I worked in um, just like a regular kitchen as a line cook. So I got my feet wet in the different areas of the restaurant industry in the back of the house before I decided, you know what, I'm gonna go do my own thing.
Gotcha, gotcha. That's fascinating. So now that when you made that decision, okay, I'm
Mhm.
gonna do my own thing, right? You officially open your doors, Love and Liberty Baking Company. How
Yeah.
was that journey like when you find out like today I'm my own boss? I have my own company. Tell us how it went.
It was a roller coaster. So I like to be squared away. So I got all of my licensing. Okay, well, let me kind of backtrack real quick.
Please.
Before I decided this is what I'm doing, I looked for resources to help me start, you know, just start, because coming from a background with no experience in starting a business, I had no idea what the first step was. So I was really lucky, and I came across the Small Business Development Center here over in San Bernardino, which is a free resource, and they offer free classes, free one-on-one sessions. And they were such an integral part in me starting my business. Um, so once I got that ball rolling, I was meeting with people, I was doing my licensings. So by February of 2020, I had all my papers and I was good to go. And then good old COVID hit.
Wow.
Yeah. So just right from the get go, I had to pivot. And get creative, because I was like, who's going to want to buy baked goods made at home in this time right now when things are so crazy and uncertain? Um, but I did quickly learn that, you really have to lean into your friends and family in those times. And, you know, the people who want to buy, they'll come. So I just started by doing like little boxes where, every month I would have a box with, 5 or 6 items, and then I would sell it. And then after about 6 months of doing that, it got really slow during the summer. Um, and, my mom was like, oh, maybe we should rethink this, maybe look into something a little bit more stable until this whole COVID thing kind of settles down. So pivoted again, and I went into 911 dispatch for a hot minute. Yeah. Yeah. That was a crazy experience, but it was a good one that I am so grateful for. And I have such a respect for dispatchers and law enforcement, because when you're actually in there and you are going on ride-alongs, you are listening in on calls and seeing, how much goes into the whole system itself. It's mind-boggling, and it takes a certain person to do that job, and that person was not me. And at the end of the day, the department that I worked for, they were amazing, super just supportive and helpful, throughout my whole training process while I was there. So I felt really bad leaving because I don't like to disappoint people. But I think at the end of the day, I felt that I had unfinished business with Love and Liberty. So after departing from there, I just told myself, you have no plan B. You're doing this, hell or high water, and you're going to figure it out. So, you know, wheels have been turning since.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. Definitely burning those boats and leaving yourself in an island where you have no choice but just to conquer, right?
Yep.
I think that's fascinating. But it's fascinating. I mean, you got, like you said, you did 911 dispatch, and being able to see those things firsthand. Especially during this crazy pandemic, which is
Mhm.
turning into an endemic now. It's
Yeah.
gonna be here for God knows, probably forever. It's gonna be
Yeah.
like one of those, like, oh, get your booster shot like a flu vaccine every every
That's
6 months or so. But
wild.
I know. I'm curious.
Mhm.
You know, with your background, right? You doing pastries, with love of baking.
Mhm.
Coming from a entrepreneurial, with the restaurant, with your grandparents and all that stuff. Meat, even your one of your grandpapas is, in a meat shop.
Yeah.
What made you choose Love and Liberty Baking Company? Like, where does that come?
The name come from?
Yes.
So when thinking of a name, it was definitely difficult. I had a hard enough time figuring out a name for my dog when I got her. So thinking of a name for a company was that much more daunting. Um, but it really just took me kind of taking the time to sit down and think about not just a name, but a brand um, that embodies not only my product, but me as a person and what my mission is. So I wanted something kind of simple, but has a lot of meaning behind it. So love comes from my love of baking. And then liberty obviously comes from me having the freedom to do it. And it could be up for interpretation, to really just follow what you love. We are blessed to live in a country where we have the freedom to be who we want, to pursue what we want, and we have the resources to do it if we look hard enough. So, I think, aside from providing delicious cookies and baked goods, I really want to be, that inspiration to people to say, hey, if you have a passion and you love what you have, something that you would love to do at the end of the day, like go for it. No one's stopping you. And we only have
Absolutely.
one go around, so why not make the most of it? And you're going to fail, but that's okay. You just get right back up and keep going.
Yeah, I love your branding. I mean, me coming from marketing, like, branding is very, very important. And
Mhm.
just your branding, just, you know, your 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 ego holding
A whisk and a rolling
a
pin.
whisk and a rolling pin is like, I was like, man, that's really, really good. And I love that. Like, I mean, the first time we took home your products, like, just the
Mhm.
packaging, right? Like, you feel like, oh, this is homemade,
Yeah.
right? It's like, if there's heart and soul was put into making this. It's
Mhm.
not just one of those commercial, although there's a lot of commercialized, good products out there,
Oh,
but like
yeah.
having that homegrown feel is
Mhm.
exactly, and that's what you were going for, and that's exactly what it was. So
Yeah.
that, like, mad props for for being able to do that.
Thanks. Just giving grandma a run for her money.
Absolutely. Well, like you mentioned, you start your business. hit with COVID, right? What
Mhm.
were and then you had to pivot, and then of course you came back.
Yeah.
What were some of the other challenges that you faced, as a startup?
Probably finances. I didn't take out any kind of loans. I essentially just, you know, sold what I could on OfferUp for, pocket change, had a little bit of savings, but really just starting small and, getting the ingredients that I needed. And then everything else, my parents helped me out a little bit with like the initial getting the tents, getting, what I need to be in a farmer's market essentially. Um, but definitely finances. So having the money and just kind of building upon that you know, and I think putting myself out there and getting myself out there, that was definitely a difficult thing for me to do. Um, Finding places to sell and, going into this, I thought I had a target market, but then once you're out there, you attract all these people who you're like, oh my gosh, I didn't even think about you. Or it's like, wait, how am I here? So just being open to those different opportunities.
That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I think that sometimes those challenges that we go through is what really sets us up for the future when the actual success that we're hoping for comes. Like,
Yeah.
you're more prepared to deal with it, right? Like, finances is definitely a huge thing. You were basically bootstrapping your business at that
Yeah.
point, kind of trading every product for future products.
Pretty
Like,
much.
you're usually, your margins are used to reinvesting your company. And I think a lot of small businesses, sometimes that's one of the biggest things is,
Mm,
it, when you start out your business, you really can't live off of it,
no.
honestly, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're fortunate enough to get like some funding
Yeah.
or things of that nature. You have to reinvest into the growth of your business.
Exactly. Exactly. So, like you said, my packaging, my brand, that is all something that had to be reinvested.
Absolutely. Well, in business and life, you
Mhm.
having come from, like a wide variety of life experiences, being able to go to India, like experiencing like working waiting tables, and coming from a family of entrepreneur who really kind of supported you,
Yeah.
and encouraged your entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah.
How would you say in business and life, what would you consider to be something that's non-negotiable for Alex?
I would say a non-negotiable for me would be just having integrity and standing firm in who you are and what you stand for um, and not wavering. So, always being honest and, showing up and doing your best. So,
Absolutely. Well, now that you're sort of in, you're in the middle of being an entrepreneur,
mhm.
what do you wish that you knew prior to becoming your own boss?
It is not as glamorous as you see it. You think, "Oh, I'm gonna be an entrepreneur, I'm gonna be my own boss, like, I'll have all the time in the world to do what I want." You're gonna have, like, the perfect work-life balance, but you know, entrepreneurship is a 24/7 job. If you, and at the end of the day, that's what I love about it the most. And it's also what is the most frustrating sometimes is at the end of the day, you get what you put in. So, if you're not out there selling, if you're not out there marketing, if you're not out there making connections and making those sales, then at the end of the day, you're not going to make any money and you're not going to grow. Um, and really, just you have to be mindful in choosing. Okay, am I going to take this event or am I going to go to my friend's party? Um, So you in the beginning you think, oh, I get to make my own schedule, this and that. But if you want to be successful and you want to grow, then you have to choose the business sometimes over personal and pleasure.
Yeah, definitely, which is not easy to do, right?
No.
Especially when it's your family that's asking for your time.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a juggling act that we all have to adjust and learn to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm very lucky. My family they help me a lot. I live with them, so I get to see them all the
Good.
time. And, they're the ones helping me put the stickers on the bag and helping me at my markets. So luckily, family time has actually grown since I started doing my own thing. It's just more of like the friends and social aspect that has kind of taken a back seat.
Absolutely. Well, with that said, what would you say has been the most important part of your entrepreneurial journey?
I think the most important part has probably been just me developing as a person, whether it be, you know, having more grit, having more resilience, to becoming a better problem solver, and learning boundaries too. I think that's been a big thing of just knowing what opportunities to say yes to and what opportunities to say no to, because it's okay to say no, but at the same time you do want to get yourself out there and be open to new experiences. So I think just growing as a person and really being mindful with aligning myself with things that are right for my business, and not just saying yes to everything that comes.
Absolutely. Well, decision makings are
Decision making,
something that,
exactly.
yeah, which is not easy. I mean,
No.
everybody's calling for your attention when you're an entrepreneur. So
Yeah,
having the making the right decision that you don't know, is this the right decision? I think you just have to
exactly,
trust your
exactly.
gut sometimes and
Trust your
take the
gut and
risk.
be okay with whatever the outcome is, whether it be good or
Absolutely.
bad.
Well, if you could have just one superpower, what would it be? But before you answer that, let's take a quick break.
Today's episode is brought to you by Thinkin' Local, a fundraising and giving-based marketing platform whose mission is to connect local Main Street businesses who care about making an impact in the local community with schools and nonprofits who believe in supporting their local businesses. Find out more by visiting local.com. And we're back, digging for gold on the Behind Main Street podcast.
So, if you could have that one superpower, what would that be?
It would be the ability to do multiple things at once and, give it all my attention. So, since right now I'm kind of a one woman show, it would be great if I could be washing dishes, making dough, getting cookies out of the oven, packaging the cold cookies all at the same time. That would be my superpower.
Wow, multitasking. I was
Yes. Yes.
at a chamber event. Dr. Reggie Thomas, just recently, just last Wednesday, he was a guest speaker at the chamber business at breakfast, and he
Oh,
was
cool.
talking about time management, right?
Mhm.
And one of the things that he mentions, like, none of us, like, biologically can really multitask. It's not a,
No.
I mean, we say that, oh, I'm a good multitasker, but it's impossible. Your brain is not meant for you to multitask, or else you're going to perish.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't evolve to multitask. We evolved to
Yeah.
survive.
Exactly. And
So,
when you say you're multitasking, you're never giving your full attention to one or the other.
yeah, exactly. But I think that's something that the sooner you realize, the better you will be.
Exactly. Yes. But I will say I've gotten more efficient over
Yeah.
time.
And that's all you could really do is be more efficient with your time. If you can cut
Yeah.
cut something to the shortest amount of time that you can without
Mhm.
cutting on quality, of course.
Oh yeah,
And then
definitely.
that's what you do.
Yep. Yep.
Well, in your opinion, what has been or is the most crucial personality trait that any entrepreneur needs to have?
I would say grit. Grit, and this is going to be the silliest analogy, but be like a toddler who's learning to walk.
That's
so,
great.
so like at my farmers markets, I see a lot of families and I see a lot of little ones who are just learning to walk. And they have such enthusiasm and such determination. They will get up and they'll take a few steps and they're like, "Ooh, I got some momentum." And they just go. And then they fall. But then they're like, "Ooh, I fell." But then they get up. So I think as an entrepreneur, you really need to have that kind of mindset, and just the ability to be okay with failing and know that it's part of the process, and just get up and learn from your mistakes. Okay, this didn't work, so I'm just going to do it differently. um, but have that enthusiasm to like, I want to do this too, because that's the only way you're going to move forward.
You bring up a great point. I never looked at it that way, right? Like a toddler. That's a great,
Yeah.
great, great analogy.
Mm-hmm.
You know, with your point, when you bring that up, what's fascinating to me. I'm thinking about it. Like I said, I have four kids, and
Mm-hmm.
when they learn to walk, I'm always imagining when they're learning to walk, they're gonna
Uh-huh.
fall on their face. But
Yeah.
what you notice, they never do. For
Yeah.
some reason, when they're gonna fall, their knees just like bend all automatically, and they fall on their behinds, right?
Yeah.
And when you bring that up now, it's like I'm thinking like they learn to fall. They learn to fail. So
Yes.
failing to them becomes just a stepping stone for them to their next step, their next step, their next step. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, that's very, very fascinating. I never thought about it that way. Thank you for bringing that up.
You're welcome. And then once they start walking, they start running, and then they get momentum, and then they just don't stop. So, if you translate that to business, it's like you get momentum and you ride that. You don't stop, or else, you know, you're going to get complacent and things are going to stop happening. So, if you find that little bit of momentum, you got to ride it out.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, when you first learn your bike, right?
Mhm.
You get on that thing and you start pedaling.
Yeah.
And then you're falling, right? Your tendency is to stop, right? You put
Uh-huh.
your feet down.
Yeah.
But whoever's teaching you, like I did this with my little ones, like just keep
Uh-huh.
going, just keep pedaling, just keep
Yeah.
pedaling. And then
Yep.
you're gonna find your balance. And
Yeah.
then it just feels like, oh my God, it's
Yeah.
not that hard.
Nope. Uh-uh.
So that's exactly. So that's really, really good. Um,
Thanks.
now that you've been sort of you know, the pandemic is not yet done, right? I mean, it's still here. And you're gonna have more and more challenges, but thus far,
Mhm.
what would you consider has been your biggest failure, and what lesson did that teach you?
I wouldn't say I have had a monumental failure yet. I've, had a lot of different hiccups. I don't know if it's just maybe my perspective where I don't see things as the end all be all when they occur. But I wouldn't say I I can articulate one specific instance where I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is an epic fail." Um, I think I've obviously have overcome challenges and I've faced challenges, but in the moment, you're all you can say is like, "This sucks," or "Oh, this didn't pan out how I wanted it to," or "Oh, I really messed up in this area." But just having the mindset of, you know what, we're going to learn from our mistakes and move on and not dwell on the past. I think it's easy to dwell and get stuck on one specific failure. but you can't do that. You gotta just accept, hey, I messed up or this didn't pan out, but that's life. So just got to roll with the punches. So I can't, to answer your question, I can't really answer your question.
Absolutely, and that's absolutely okay. Well, I mean, if you let's talk about like if you could make just one mistake over again,
Yeah.
what would that be, and how would you do things a little bit differently next time around?
Let's see. If I can make one mistake over, I think before entrepreneurship, um, I think just staying in work environments that were not conducive to me or were not a good fit.
Mm,
I think that's something where I didn't want to disappoint or I felt obligated to stay or to just accept it and say, that's it is what it is. But in reality, it's like, okay, maybe the leadership wasn't as good as it should have been. Or an instance where I wasn't treated the way I should have been treated, and not just leaving earlier. So I think that's something that I would probably, do over again is just, you know, stand up for myself earlier, per se.
gotcha. And I think a lot of our listeners who may not yet be an entrepreneur
Mm.
or even an entrepreneur are they find themselves in situations that, like you said, are not conducive to their creativity, not conducive
Yeah,
to bringing the best out of us, out of them. And I
exactly.
think the faster we recognize that situation,
Mhm.
the faster it is that we can get to the next spot where we
Yeah,
can be
yeah,
ourselves and where we can be successful. So
exactly.
that's a really, really great point.
And that goes back to, we don't have all the time in the world, so don't waste it.
For sure. Well, is there someone or something that you turn to when you feel stuck?
When I feel stuck, I mean, initially I turn to my mom. She is my sounding board. She's like my best friend, and she'll always be a shoot straighter with me and not be afraid to hurt my feelings. So her, and then, I like to think of myself as someone of faith. So I pray and, I talk to the big man upstairs to, just talk through what's going on. Um, but I also turn to podcasts when I feel stuck, and I like to listen to stories of other people who have faced adversity or who are, you know, who've gone through worse things than me to kind of give me perspective of, ooh, okay, maybe this isn't that big of a deal.
Absolutely. Well, in line with that, what keeps you going when it gets really tough? What's that drive that kind of keeps you going?
I think the drive of really just pursuing my purpose and knowing that I I have a sense of purpose, to serve others and to use my talents for good and to give back to others and to make this place, make my environment a better place. So that really motivates me, and really just every time I interact with a customer, that is a huge motivation for me when a little kid is like shelling out their wallet and they want to spend their allowance money on my baked goods. That's a huge motivation for me to keep doing what I'm doing.
Wow, absolutely. Goes back to your customers,
Yeah.
the avatar, that person that you're trying to serve is
Mhm.
ultimately what keeps you going.
Yep.
Are there any, you would say, resources other than your mom that you turn to when you're struggling that has helped you?
So like I said, the Small Business Development Center has been an incredible help. I actually just called them because I want to go from a class A to a class B. So hopefully they can help guide me and navigate me through, making that next step and expanding. So they're a great local resource, for people in business or in small businesses. And then also, I like to listen to podcasts on entrepreneurship and people who have been successful in their own businesses and learn from them.
Well, a lot of people are going to start once they listen to your episode, they're also going to learn from you. So you're
Yes.
going to be one of those podcast episodes that people are going to take some valuable nuggets and valuable lessons from in their journey of entrepreneurship.
Good. Well, I'm happy to do so, and thank you for giving me the opportunity to put those little nuggets out there.
Well, what would you say has been the biggest aha moment for you?
um, I would probably say, like I said, it's hard for me to pinpoint one instance, but I struggle with recognizing the small wins within myself. So it has to come from an outside source of like, hey, like you're actually doing pretty good and you're doing what you want to do. And, to see other people get excited about what I've created, I think that's kind of like where it hits me of like, oh, like I'm doing pretty good. People are enthusiastic about, not only what I sell, but my brand and, just the most unexpected opportunities that come about. You're just like, huh, okay, like things have a way of working themselves out.
That's fantastic. Well, if you could talk to 18-year-old self, what
Yes.
advice would you give her?
I would say do not hold so tightly to a timeline. Because like I said, it's hard not to compare yourself to your contemporaries. And when I was 18, I always thought, okay, by this age, I'm gonna, have this, and this. And, I'm at that age where I said I would be, and I would have this, and this, and it could not have been any further from what I had imagined at 18. So I think I would tell 18-year-old Alex, like, you're doing just fine. Don't hold too tightly to, what everyone else is doing, at that point in your life. It's okay to do something different. It's okay to not be where your friends are at in life. Because that's something that I've struggled with lately, especially. It's like, oh my gosh, I'm almost 30. I'm back at my parents' house. I barely have a business starting. Like, forget marriage and kids, like what my friends are all doing. Like, oh my gosh, this is not where I expected to be. But, I couldn't be happier with pursuing what I'm doing. So that's what I would tell 18-year-old Alex is don't hold so tightly to a timeline.
That is great advice, even for not just for yourself, but a lot of us at that
Yes.
age, we're at a point where we're trying to figure out what path we're going to take, and
Hmm.
that path usually we're either leaning towards what our family or friends are saying,
Yeah.
or what society is telling us that this is the future. Like I remember growing up, like oh, computers was the thing.
Yeah, so wild, and look where
So
we're at now.
exactly. You mentioned earlier that your superpower would be to be able to multitask, right? Well,
Yes.
clearly that's something we can't do. But as an entrepreneur,
Uh-huh.
what would you say that you do as your favorite productivity hack?
My favorite productivity hack would probably be just if a task takes less than 5 minutes, just do it. Whether it's sending off an email, whether it's, organizing my ingredients or going to this, just putting labels on my bags in my free time or you know looking into events to do in the future. Like if it's something that takes less than 5 minutes, just do it because at 10 o'clock at night you're gonna wish you had done it instead of checking in Instagram. So I guess my best advice would be just put the phone down, put the apps away, and don't procrastinate.
Absolutely. There's that book I read a while back. It was called, I forgot who the author was, but it's called Eat That Frog,
Huh.
which is which is so
Super.
weird, right? Because if you I- like the premise of the book is if you had to eat a frog
Uh-huh.
for breakfast,
Ooh.
eat the biggest one first
Yeah.
because then everything else is like easy. Because
Easy.
like if I had to eat a frog in the morning, a live frog,
Yeah.
that's probably the worst thing that I'm gonna have to do that day. Everything is gonna
Exactly.
be easy from that point on.
Hmm.
Well, if you were granted 3 wishes, what would you wish for?
I would say I would wish that money wasn't a thing. So just don't have to worry about money. Just live a comfortable life and not have to stress about a paycheck or, you know, that that kind of stuff. Second wish would be I think I would this might go hand in hand with the $100 million question. I think I would wish for just a large property that would be like a blank canvas for, either a bakery or a place to have events and to host people. Um, so I think that would be my second wish. And third wish would be, hmm, that's a tough one. I think my third wish would just for kids to be able to have the kind of childhood that I had of, being able to play outside and, growing up in a neighborhood where you knew all your neighbors. I think that's something that's been lost over the years of just, you know, who knows.
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure. I think that I mean, I tell my kids, "Oh, why don't you guys go play outside?" Well,
Yeah.
because I don't know our neighbors.
Yeah.
And our neighbors, like, don't have kids, so, like,
Mhm.
you have to drive or walk, like, far away just to figure out, like, which neighbor has a
Who
kid,
has
so,
the
yeah,
kids around here?
absolutely. I know, well, that's why I have 4, so they can play amongst themselves.
Oh, exactly, or that, problem solved.
Yeah. Well, could you recommend, for our listeners, 3 books that has helped you?
So, I'm not much of a reader. I'm the
Or
person who
shows,
who
or
who falls
podcasts?
asleep, so I will recommend podcasts. I would probably say the 3 that I listen to the most, and these are all very much like entrepreneurial podcasts. So the first one is Real AF, and it is Andy Frisella, and he is all about kind of like fitness, entrepreneurship, um, and just has a lot of interesting people on his show and topics that he talks about. Um, Another one is Team Never Quit, and that one is hosted by Marcus Luttrell, who is an ex Navy SEAL, or better known as like the lone survivor. And he has a lot of inspirational people on who are both entrepreneurs or just people who have just overcome incredible adversity in their life and are doing great and productive things to give back. And then the third is so I'm going to give you four. So the third is going to be it's called Order of Man. So that host is Ryan Mickler. Um, Another just entrepreneurship, very like faith, family, fitness. And that's kind of like the common thread with all these podcasts is they're entrepreneurs. They are into fitness, faith, family. So a lot of values that I share.
Gotcha, gotcha, perfect. Wow, that's amazing. I haven't listened to any of those.
Okay.
I'm gonna that's my next. I'm gonna add them to my Spotify list. So that's
Oh
gonna be
yeah,
good.
that's what I do when I bake. I listen to podcasts.
I know that's so amazing. Like I used to do it while driving. That
Hmm.
was like Drive Time University, and so yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing that we have this now. I remember podcast back in the day was something like what? Like you had to only have like an iPod,
Yeah.
right? That's where it all comes from, and not
Mhm.
everybody had an iPod before, so
I
it's
had my own
fascinating to be
little
able to
Nano
do
back in
this.
the day.
Oh, I know. I remember. Yep, for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, now, what are you most looking forward to your future as an entrepreneur?
I'm looking forward to just expanding and just seeing where the future takes me. Like I said, I kind of just I go with the flow. I don't hold too tightly to an idea because, like we've seen over the past few years, you know, it could be taken from you overnight. So just being flexible, but also maintaining um, just my brand and staying true to who I am. Um, and just kind of just seeing where the wind takes me. So just continue to work, continue to come up with some really good baked goods. And like I said, I'm looking to expand and be able to get my permit to resell. So hopefully I get to team up with some other really awesome businesses in the future.
That's fantastic. Was there any question that you wish I'd asked you that I didn't get a chance to?
No, I think we covered all the bases. You asked some really good questions.
Thank you, thank you. Well, in closing, what is one piece of practical advice that you can share with our listeners in their journey of entrepreneurship?
I think the one piece, I may just go back to my toddler analogy of, stay persistent and you're accept that failure is part of the process, and it's inevitable. We're all going to fail. So I think the best thing you can do is just keep a positive attitude while in those times of failure, and be able to take a step back and evaluate where you went wrong, and have be be honest with yourself when and take ownership. I think that's the most important part, is to take ownership over all that you do. So everything that you do right, everything that you do wrong as the business owner, it falls on your shoulders. So take ownership. And I think that's what's also the greatest part about being a business owner, is having that sense of ownership over the work that you do, and knowing that, it comes out of your labor of love.
That's great advice. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Where can listeners learn more about you and your business?
So I'm on Instagram and on Facebook, and I have my own website. So everything is going to be at Love and Liberty Baking, and then my website is loveandlibertybaking.com. So there you get to see photos of all the delicious baked goods. I'm most active on Instagram, so you can stay up to date with any pop-ups that I'm doing, markets that I'm doing. So it's all there. And then on my website, I have my menu. You can order online. I do pickups in Chino, or you can pick up at a market. So that's an option too.
Awesome, awesome. Well, I'm definitely going to have all of those information on the description of this episode and on this video. So
Awesome.
thank you so much, Alex, for being such a gracious and great guest. They gave us a lot of actionable nuggets that we could be able to use practically in our businesses, that we can apply to our business. I want to invite our listeners to please do check out Alex from Liberty Baking Company, as well as being able to check out all of the stuff and keep her try her goods. They're definitely good. I can attest to them, but also share them with your friends. I would also like to request that you subscribe, share, and leave a rating on this episode. I would very much appreciate your honest feedback, which helps me continually provide impactful content that I hope you will find valuable. And always remember that every day that you face adversity, think of that as an opportunity to find the gold inside you. Until next time, have a success-filled day.
Thanks for listening to the Behind Main Street podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Remember to visit www.behindmainstreet.com.